Secretary.
Yes,
Exactly.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. I'm Major General William Wade, and I am the Adjutant General of your California National Guard. I would like to thank some very important people for being here today. Senator Dave Cogdill from Fresno, Assemblyman Mike Villines from Fresno, Bryce Harris, Chancellor of Los Rios Community College District and California Community Colleges, Dr. Glenn Thomas, Secretary of Education, Doug Hoffner, Acting Secretary, California Labor and Workforce Agency, Mr. Tom Johnson, Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Andy Martinez, Legislative Analyst, California State University System, and my Assistant Adjutant General, Brigadier General Mary J. Kite. Once again, good morning and thank you for being here. 3.5 years ago, when the governor asked me to lead this nation's premier state defense force, he told me without equivocation his number one priority was the safety of all California citizens. Since then, the 22,000 soldiers and airmen of the California National Guard have responded to catastrophic forest fires, protected our borders, flown air sovereignty missions over California and the West Coast, and also performed countless search and rescue missions both over land and over water. In doing so, these outstanding men and women have used the very skills that they learned while on many years of active duty since the events of 9/11. After charging me with ensuring that the Guard is prepared to support California whenever and wherever needed, the governor asked me one question. He says, General, what does the Guard need? My answer from that moment and until this day is still the same. We need an education benefit for our Guardsmen to help retain those critical skills that they use every day throughout this state for emergencies. Provided with lucrative recruiting incentives by both the Army and the Air Force, retention remains a state responsibility. Although we're the richest and most populous state in the Union, California remains the only state that does not have an educational benefit for its National Guard. However, to the state's credit, we have a governor who understands the need for and retaining the benefits of a strong, well-staffed, and vibrant National Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to present to you my boss, the Commander-in-Chief, Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger.
But thank you very much, General Wade. And I want to say thank you to all of our National Guard men and women that are here today. I mean, it makes this redundant action-packed. Look at this. Love it. But anyway, I want to say also thank you to Senator Cogdill and our Secretary of Education, Glenn Thomas, and Chancellor Harris from the Community College, and Secretary Tom Johnson from Veterans Affairs, and Secretary Doug Hoffner from Labor and Workforce, and the General Marty Kite. So we want to thank them all for being here and everyone else that is here. But before I talk about this very important bill, SB 815, and about the great work that Senator Cogdill has done, I want to just bring you up to date when it comes to the swine flu. The Center of Disease Control has now confirmed that there's 11 cases in California, even though you saw maybe some reports of 13 cases, but there's 2 cases that are unconfirmed. So I want to make sure that you know why there's a confusion. It's 11 confirmed cases, 5 in San Diego County, 5 in Imperial County, and 1 in Sacramento County. We are grateful that in California all of those cases have been relatively mild to moderate. And of course, we are very much prepared if this escalates and there's more severe cases coming up. We are taking strong and swift action to limit the spread of the virus and to minimize its effects. Today, I'm issuing an emergency proclamation to strengthen California's response. And what this basically does is it gives us some extra tools for our health authorities in order to respond very quickly. And it also will cut through the red tape so that all state agencies will have to go and assist the Department of Public Health in every way possible. We are also joining the Federal Centers of Disease Control in recommending that schools that have a student that has the virus, we will close the classrooms for 1 week. In addition, the federal government has released 25% of its stockpile of antiviral drugs, masks, and protective gear, and California's share is already arriving here in our state. The state is also working with affected communities to assess the need for antiviral drugs and supplies. As a matter of fact, right now, San Diego, Imperial, Merced, and the Ventura counties, the supplies are already on the way. The federal government has provided equipment so that today at the Department of Public Health, Richmond Laboratory can now do their own testing, which is very important for us because it speeds up the testing and the results we can get back right away, because before then we had to send it to Atlanta, which always took more time. So this would speed up that process. And I think it's very important also to let the people know that this is a situation that can only really be solved if everyone works together. So I think that everyone has certain responsibilities. I think if you wash your hands throughout the day as frequently as possible, if you use, for instance, a tissue for your nose or throat, if you cough or sneeze, I think it's very important. And if a student or if someone is sick, don't go to school. If you're sick, don't go to work, so you don't spread this illness. California has all of the essential building blocks in place to respond swiftly to this situation. California has fantastic resources. California has the best minds in science and in medicine, and California has the best emergency response system in the world. I'm very proud of the kind of system that we have and how quickly people respond. And the key thing here is, and California does this always, we work together very quickly with the locals, the state level, the federal level, and also the international medical community. So if you have any questions about that afterwards, we have Dr. Horton here who can answer those questions. And now let's go to this very important bill, something that I've been for many, many years, which is SB 815. We talk about here a very special bill that is for the brave men and women for California National Guard. And I'm proud to join here Senator Cogdill, who is a great public servant and who is the author of Senate Bill 815. This legislation is long overdue, and it reflects, basically the truth. As we all remember, or as we know, that Franklin Roosevelt 60 years ago signed the GI Bill. And there he said that each and every member of our armed forces who risked their lives for this nation deserve a chance to go to college and to build a bright future and to fulfill their American dream. And that was the promise that he made 60 years ago. The only problem with that is that it left the National Guards out, and there's a gap in the law. Only Guard members on federal missions, such as to Iraq or to Afghanistan, are eligible for those kind of education benefits. That leaves thousands of those Guard members who serve close to home, but also taking tremendous risks and risking their lives. It leaves them with nothing. And so 49 states in the United States have solved that problem and filled this gap. Because gaps happen all the time in laws. The key thing is that we fill this gap then and we fix it. The only problem is that California did not fix this gap. It's the only state in the union that has not done that, and that is simply unconscionable. It is a mark of shame upon our great state, and it's terrible. It's a terrible wrong that must be made right, and here's a chance to make it right. Senate Bill 815 will do just that. It provides $3.6 million to help California Guard members pay tuitions and fees at our universities and at our community colleges. We estimate this will help nearly 1,300 Guard members and their families. It will help recruit, retain, and reward our brave men and women in uniform. And it is ironic that California holds the dubious distinction of being the only state not to offer these benefits. So because, with all due respect, I have to say there is, all due respect to our other governors of other states, there's no other states, National Guards that can even compare remotely with our National Guard in California. Because our National Guard in California, without any doubt, are the best trained, are the bravest and the hardest working soldiers and airmen in the country. And so this is why I believe that we should pass this bill as quickly as possible so I can sign it. Every natural disaster, our National Guard is there. If I think back of just last year, when I got the phone call that we have 2,000 fires simultaneously breaking out in California because of dry lightning. We did not have the manpower to take care of all of those fires. We did not have the resources. So I made the phone call, and the National Guards were right there in action within a day or two. They jumped into action and saved the day, flying 1,700 hours and dropping 5 million gallons of water. It was extraordinary what they've done. They're there when there are earthquakes, floods, mudslides, you name it, they're there. And they never hesitate to cross our state line to help their fellow Americans. As a matter of fact, they were one of the first ones when Katrina happened, and they were there helping people off the roofs and saving more than 200 lives. But the men and women of the National Guard risk everything, yet ask for very little in return. They're willing to put their lives on hold, to leave their jobs and to leave their families with a short notice. Every time we pick up the phone, I get from General Wade the same answer, and with no hesitation at all. He says, Governor, whatever you need, the National Guard is there for you. The National Guard is there to serve the people of California. So since that is the case, since they have been always so brave and hardworking and serving the state of California, I think the least that they need is we do the same in return. And so let's pass this legislation, SB 815, once and for all. I want to say thank you again to Senator Cogdill for the great work that he has done. And I want to ask the legislators upstairs to pass this legislation, because I can promise you that the second it hits my desk, I will sign it. Thank you very much. And now I would like to bring out Senator Cogdill to make some remarks. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am very pleased and honored to be here today to stand with Governor Schwarzenegger and promote SB 815, a bill that's very important, certainly to me, but much more important to the men and women of the California National Guard. And it's, again, an honor for me to be able to carry this bill as a proud veteran of the California Air National Guard and one who's witnessed firsthand the great work that these men and women do and their selfless sacrifice that they and their families make for each and every one of us on an ongoing basis. And the fact, as the governor pointed out, that we are the only state in the union that does not honor them with an educational benefit is quite frankly disgraceful and hard for me, and I think probably for many of you and others that didn't realize that, to believe. California has been a leader in so many ways, and I hope that we will now follow the lead of every other state in this union and pass SB 815 and provide this very important educational benefit for the men and women of the California National Guard. The governor did a great job of outlining how much we rely on them. It's not just that they're called out in times of war or when our country needs them to respond to whatever happens to be going on in the world outside the borders of the United States, but certainly what they do on an ongoing basis in the way of disaster relief to provide security in some of the most insecure times that we face, either through natural disaster or what have you. And again, I think it's a very small token that we as Californians can make to provide this educational benefit that obviously will be not only of great benefit to the men and women of the California National Guard, but a great benefit to our economy. We all know the importance of education and how important higher education is to each and every one of us and to our economy. And each and every one of these individuals have proven that they have the dedication and the steadfastness and the desire to follow through and to meet their goals. And it's only right that we provide them with the resources necessary that they can do that, and again, at the same time, continue to benefit this great state. So again, I'm very honored to be carrying this bill and hope that you will all get the word out, contact your legislators, and ask them to please support SB 815. As the governor said, if we can get it to his desk, we're home free. And we will join the other 49 states in this union in providing this great benefit for these wonderful men and women. At this time, I'd like to introduce a very good friend of mine who is carrying a very similar bill in the Assembly. We hope to join forces certainly on his bill and on SB 815 and together get this done. And that's my very good friend, the Republican leader in the Assembly, Mike Villines. Mike?
Thank you, Senator Cogdill. You know, I stand here because I want to, first of all, just salute these men and women. Can we give them a round of applause and make it loud? These are the folks that keep us free from invasion. They're the ones that go around the world. They're the ones that save us in earthquakes and fires. They do it. They volunteer. They deserve the education. California should do it just like 49 other states have done it. My father had the GI Bill. When he came out of Korea, it gave him a chance at life, got him into university, and changed his life and subsequently changed mine. And I think it's important that we do that for these folks. I think the leadership being shown by Senator Cogdill to take this bill and by General Wade, who has been unwavering in wanting support for this bill, talking to all legislators. I'm proud to carry a similar bill. I think that Senator Cogdill's bill is going to move forward because it's the right thing to do. And ultimately, the Governor Schwarzenegger, who has talked about this endlessly as well, that these men and women from California should have our support. So I'm here just to give my support to Senator Cogdill on this bill. It's important. I believe we're going to get it done this year, and these men and women will have their lives transformed and their children's lives transformed because we finally did the right thing. And now somebody who can talk directly to it, I'm going to introduce Chancellor Bryce Harris to come to the podium.
Thank you. I'm here today and pleased to be representing California higher education, where more than 22,000 active duty military and veterans are currently enrolled. That number is expected to triple just in the next few years, and California's 110 community colleges enroll 75% of the active duty military and veterans currently enrolled. They use California's community colleges for the first 2 years in preparation to transfer to either the University of California or the California State University system, or to access the world of work directly through training for professions in nursing and healthcare, in police and fire, in high tech and engineering, in construction technology, and even the emerging fields in the clean and green sector. SB 815 will enhance the education level of all of our members of the Guard without burdening them with additional higher education debt, and it will allow them to capitalize on their military training by combining that with formal higher education training. SB 815 will provide California with a more highly educated workforce. It's certainly good for the members of the Guard, and it's great for the state of California. It's now a pleasure for me to introduce the Secretary of Education for the state of California, Dr. Glenn Thomas.
Thank you. As Secretary of Education, I would like to acknowledge the Governor's aggressive work with the swine flu and leading the fabulous response team that we have in California. The safety and health of California's youth is job number one. And secondly, I'd like to acknowledge the fabulous service of our National Guard. Our Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, has been a national leader when it comes to getting access to higher education for those who serve our state and our nation. And this bill, Senate Bill 815, recognizes that service and sacrifice of the men and women of the California National Guard, and would help nearly 1,300 of them with their college education, either at the California Community Colleges, the California State University, or the University of California. This education will provide an incentive to the most experienced men and women to stay in the National Guard, and when they leave, they'll be very prepared to take up important positions in our state's workforce. We support this bill. At this point, I'd like to turn it back to the Governor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to ask. Yes, please.
Deployed the National Guard to help
If you
out.
pull the mic closer to you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Looks like you've deployed the National Guard to help out with the swine flu epidemic. What can you tell us about the importance of the Tamiflu shipments, and how will that be used? Why is that so important?
Well, I think that Dr. Horton is here. They can talk exactly about the importance of it, but I think the stockpiling of this material is very important, so we all have it, and it will be stored here in Sacramento at this point, and then it will go also to the locals. And I think what is also important, as I said earlier, is that we can do our own testing here, that we have the equipment ready to go for the testing, because that is one of the most important things, to get the results back right away, so we can act accordingly. And whenever you send something to Atlanta, it takes more time. So I think that really gives us some extra strength. And that's why I've also announced to have this proclamation ready to go, the emergency proclamation, so that the agencies, the state agencies, and also the health officials all work together much more swiftly and can move forward. We want to be as prepared as possible, and I said this yesterday. We are prepared. We are very fortunate that we have agencies that always work together very quickly, because we have a lot of emergencies in this state, and so we are used to that. And so our emergency services, our health departments, everyone is always ready for the action. Yes.
Thank you. Do you think we should be doing more to limit travel between Mexico and the United States, maybe shut down the border? You talk about limiting the spread of the disease. You limit travel of people, you're going to limit the spread of the disease.
Well, first of all, this is more a federal issue when it comes to talking about restrictions in traveling and in closing down airports or closing the border. And so the federal government, I'm sure, is on top of that. I think that Janet Napolitano, Secretary of Homeland Security, has talked about it. This is something that where they could go in the future. They've already advised not to travel to certain places if not necessary, certain areas in Mexico. And so it depends, how it progresses and how severe the situation gets. But it's not in our power to go and say, let's close down Los Angeles airport, no one can come in from Mexico, or to go to say to people, okay, we forbid you to travel. We can give advice. I think that at this point I will give anyone advice not to travel to places where this is, and I also will give advice to people that, that in areas where they have it, to really do as much as they can. And this is why I said earlier, for people to wash their hands when they cough, have a cloth in front of your nose and mouth and so on. And when you have contacted this virus, don't go to school, don't go to work, don't have contact with other people. So it's a no-brainer to do that. So I think that as we go, and since they have now increased this from level 3 to level 4, I think that we have certain measures that will kick in because of that. I think what I'm interested in is that we are always ahead of the ball and not behind and chasing it. We want to be ahead of it, so this is why it is important for us. And Dr. Horton, I want to bring him out here just to talk to you for a minute about this. We are very, very aggressive here in this state. I mean, we are in touch with the federal government, with the health officials, with Atlanta, with everybody, and with the international health community, because we want to know exactly what everyone else is thinking, what everyone else is doing. But we are always number one with our reaction. There's no two ways about it. So, Dr. Horton, if you come out and just say a few words about this, please.
Thanks, Governor. Just to add to the Governor's comments about the border, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, has issued a travel advisory. Now they are officially advising individuals not to travel to Mexico, any part of Mexico, unless it's absolutely necessary. And in addition, as the Governor mentioned, Secretary Napolitano has increased surveillance at the border, so that now our Border Patrol is on, quote, passive surveillance, looking for cases of influenza at the border and would separate them from the flow of folks into the United States. But once again, wanted to indicate that we are leaning ahead. Back on the Tamiflu issue, I completely agree, of course, with the Governor that it's all about preparedness ahead of time. What we're doing is pre-positioning resources that would be necessary, such that if in fact there were a significant increase in the number of individuals needing medical attention and treatment with Tamiflu, we would have those resources available to us.
Thank you very much. And one more thing, I know the swine flu is very important, but I want to make sure that all of you pay also as much attention to our National Guard and to the fact that we're the only state that does not offer this kind of education help. And there's people that may say, well, we have a financial crisis and that we have a huge deficit. How do we afford an extra $3 million? Well, that's why we wanted to get rid of the Waste Management Board, which costs a little bit more than $3 million. And I think if you get rid of that, which we don't need, which the legislators yesterday refused to go and get rid of it, which is really a shame when we have a financial crisis. Those are the kind of things that the people of California like to see. California, the legislature to go and to trim and to go and get rid of some of the waste that we have. And I think there's no greater waste than the Waste Management Board. So there's $3 million plus that we can save, and that money could go directly to the education of those things. So if you think about who is there at the waste management, And then who is standing right here? Look at these men and women that are risking their lives. We want to get them in return some education and some education money. And I remember when I came over to this country, if I wouldn't have had the help from some people to give me money for education, I mean, I paid a lot of it myself, but I got a lot of help also. That's what you need in order to get education. I want them to have the education rather than to waste this money on a waste management board. Yes.
As you know, tomorrow is Obama's 100th day in office. Would you please assess his first 100 days and how the impact has been on California with him and the presidency?
Well, I think, and I always say that our administration, would do everything that we can to make President Obama a very, very successful president. Because if President Obama is successful, then we in the United States are successful, and our economy will come back, and we will overcome all of our obstacles, if it is the obstacles when it comes to home foreclosures or the financial crisis, unemployment, and all of those kind of issues. So we all have to work together. I think he has done an extraordinary job in reaching out. He has had a tremendous amount of contact with our administration, has included us in healthcare reform, has included us in infrastructure and in an economic stimulus package. So we have had great relationships with them, and we're working very closely together. I think he has done an extraordinary job. I think he's a great communicator. I think he represented us well overseas. I was proud of him when he was overseas, and how everyone kind of danced around him, even though he was new. He was again the center of the action, even though the other countries pointed the finger at us and made us believe that it's our fault that the economic crisis worldwide is happening. But when we went up, they all participated and bought our bills and participated in investing in America. Then when it goes down, of course, there's always a lot of finger pointing, which was unfair. But nevertheless, America was the center. I think that President Obama created great action, and so I think we have to continue supporting him as much as possible to make him successful, and therefore to make our state successful, because we are not isolated, California. We are part of the United States. And that half of the action comes from our state, within our state, through the legislatures, through the executive office in the state, but the other half comes clearly from Washington. If it's healthcare reform, if it's infrastructure, if it's education, all of those things, fixing our unemployment crisis, we have to work together. So I will give him a great mark for the great work that he has done the first 100 days. Thank you very much. Thank you.